Need proof that Hyundai is consistently inconsistent? Then look no further than the 2026 Ioniq 9. It's all-electric 3-row SUV. And I don't mean that as an insult, but just take a look at the design. It looks nothing like the Ioniq 5 or the Ioniq 6 that came before it. Yes, it's got that whole pixel theme going on, but that's about it. There's no real family resemblance, and that is entirely by design. I remember chatting with the designer, the head of the design team behind this vehicle, Simon Losby, great guy, and he talked about not having these identical vehicles. And yes, there is a risk of not being able to easily identify them as Hyundai products, especially for what is still a relatively young brand. But they have this whole chess piece approach. They want them to look different, and this very much does that. It's got this real kind of boat tail shape and then this bulbous nose. I'm not sold on the front end, but the rest of it is very cool. Something else I want to point out, this thing is not really that big when you look at it. Yes, it's got a longer wheelbase than the Hyundai Palisade, but it doesn't look enormous, and yet there is a ton of space in here, including in the third row. I'm about 6'4". Another journalist on this First Drive program who's just about the same height as me, we hopped into the third row to start this day, and we fit with room to spare. I was very impressed with the packaging in here. The same goes for the front half of the cabin, as well as all the space for stuff. There are cubbies and shelves everywhere. This center console moves. There's a drawer on the back of it. So passengers in the second row can access stuff just as easily as you can from the front. And this lid up here is dual hinge, so you can open it from the front or the back. Lots of clever little touches. Some stuff I don't like. These climate controls, touch controls, not so good. They're also very low on the dash, so it means you have no choice but to look at them to use them. But then on the flip side, I like the fact that the screens up here, these dual 12.3-inch screens, are nice and low on the dash, so they are not distracting at all. Now, yes, this top trim I'm driving does have a head-up display, which is helpful, but I really like that these aren't directly in your line of sight, because you really should be paying attention to what's happening in front of the vehicle, and the way this is laid out really helps. Now let's get into some of the details about what makes this thing go, starting with the massive 110 kilowatt hour battery pack that underpins it. But importantly, you don't really feel it. And yes, this is sort of a common theme. As electric vehicles sort of mature and automakers get better at building them, you don't really feel that rigidity, that big stiff battery pack that runs under the floor. But especially in here, this cruise around Vancouver Island, lots of bumps and heaves in the road, but haven't really noticed the battery pack. And if anything, this suspension is so supple and so nice, but it's not loose. This is a supremely comfortable vehicle out on the road. The seats are nice, and all the acoustic insulation in here, including active noise cancellation and acoustically laminated glass on the front doors as well as the back doors, helps to keep it relatively quiet. Now, this pavement is a little porous, and with the stereo off, you can hear a little bit of road noise, but it's really not that bad. It's no worse than other EVs I've tested, even luxury ones like the Lucid Gravity. I didn't drive that thing too long ago, and that honestly seems like a noisier vehicle inside than this Ioniq 9. That is a huge compliment to what the engineers and designers have accomplished with this thing. Now, we should also talk about what that battery pack delivers. There is only one battery here. Unlike the Kia EV9, this thing's corporate cousin that's built on the same eGMP platform. There's only that 110 kilowatt hour battery, whereas Kia has gone with a 76.1 kilowatt hour battery to start, and then there's a 98 kilowatt or so battery higher up in the lineup. Hyundai has gone with a single battery and range 500 to 539 kilometers, depending on the trim, because wheel size, power output, all of that stuff affects how far it can travel on a full charge. I decided to put that to the test, but I did it a sort of fun way out here on Vancouver Island. I decided to make a destination, and that destination was a very fantastic pizza joint on the other side of the island. No, this is not an endorsement, but it was a fun little adventure. And we have been doing absolutely incredible. Now, when we set out this morning, we had 512 kilometers of range, which is more than the 500 that this top trim is rated for. But as the day has gone on, we've maintained a nice and healthy amount of range left over. I wanted to keep that about 20% just in case something went wrong, including what did go wrong during this drive. We were coming back up the highway and there was a vehicle that was rolled over. Those are the sort of situations where we ended up sitting there for about 45 minutes waiting for traffic to clear, and having that extra range left over is helpful because it cuts that anxiety. That means about 420 kilometers we can cover with a little less than 100 kilometers left at the end of the day. That is pretty good stuff. I like the fact that this does hit that golden number of 500 kilometers on a full charge. That's so many EV shoppers, potential or otherwise, have talked about wanting in their next electric vehicle. Now, something else a lot of people want to see that's here, a NACS port, a Tesla style charger right here built into the side of the vehicle. This still rides on an 800 volt architecture. It's capable of being hooked up to 350 kilowatt stations, but this thing does have that Tesla style charger, which means you can access that brand's supercharger network and use sort of a plug and charge system. So you hook up and it just charges a credit card that's paired with an account, so you don't need half a dozen different accounts for all these different EV stations with money loaded on them that you end up forgetting about. It is very nice, and if you do hook up to a fast charger, you should be able to make that benchmark 10 to 80% jump in about 24 minutes. Yes, that is in ideal conditions, but it's not too bad. It makes this thing a lot more reasonable to live with when you're on a road trip like this one. Now, we did not plug in, but it's nice to know that we could, and we wouldn't be waiting around too long if we did. Now, I'm not sure what the lineup is like in the States, but in Canada, it is very straightforward. There's an essential rear-wheel drive. That's where you're going to get the most range, 539 kilometers. Then there is a preferred trim that's all-wheel drive, and then there is a preferred plus, and that's sort of like a performance version. That's what I'm driving right now. And then there are two packages on top of those trims, one that can be added to the preferred and one that can be added to the preferred plus, and that is the ultimate calligraphy, the one I am driving. So it is decked out with everything you can imagine, including heated and ventilated first and second row seats, but it does come at a very hefty price. This top trim, it's about 83.5 grand before tax in Canada. That means it is almost as expensive as the Volkswagen ID Buzz. That is very cool, but very expensive. Yes, this thing has more range, but it is more expensive than the Kia EV9 with the GT line package, the top trim. It is a couple grand more, and that is important. If you go down a trim, if you go with the preferred with the luxury package, you're still looking at about 78.5 grand before tax. And that's why I think maybe the sweet spot is the preferred or the preferred plus, both of which have all-wheel drive, but they are about 67 grand before tax. Now, don't get me wrong, that is still a lot of money, but it's much more reasonable, and there's still a good selection of items. Really, what you're choosing between is whether you want performance or not. Now, if you go with this preferred plus, you're getting 422 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. Big numbers, but just like I say with EVs, they don't really matter. Yes, it's cool that they can accelerate quickly, but I honestly think that's overblown. They should be smooth and comfortable, and yes, just a little bit quick, and I think this thing fits that bill to perfection, because it does get up and go when you want it to, but if you're just cruising around casually, it feels silky smooth. It matches the ride quality very well, as well as the steering. And something else that is perfectly dialed is the regenerative braking. Now, there are 4 different settings you can pick from. You can shut it off completely, but then there are levels 1, 2, and 3, and then the maximum level gives you full one-pedal driving, and it is just very well measured. Hyundai has made it better than before. Better than the Ioniq 6, better than the Ioniq 5. It is one of those things that has been steadily improved with time, and I just absolutely love using it. I really haven't seen a compelling argument for not using one-pedal driving in an EV. A couple other things to touch on. It's got this column mounted shifter that does take a little bit of time getting used to, because you just rotate it forward or back depending on whether you want drive or reverse, and then hit a button on the end for park. The sort of complicated thing is that it does have the start stop button here on the front side of the stock, but I can't really see it at a glance from my seating position. Yes, I'm a tall guy, but it is sort of obstructed by the steering wheel itself. But you know, let's be honest, when you live with a vehicle for long enough, that's the sort of stuff that you get used to, and it does become second nature. Honestly, I am impressed with this thing overall. Now, yes, it is expensive at the top of the lineup, but lower down, it does become a little bit more reasonable. Something that I would strongly consider. No, there aren't many three-row EVs out there, but I do think Hyundai has built a good one. It's big, it's spacious, it's got that great battery and decent range. It's expensive for sure, but if you are in the market for a smooth, comfortable, quiet, and spacious EV, I really think this thing hits the mark. Maybe not so much at the top of the lineup, but somewhere lower down, there just might be an Ioniq 9 for you.